Okay, and I think we're live, so welcome everyone. This is my first time hosting one of these, so hopefully I've pushed all the right buttons and everyone is actually seeing it and we're not just going to end up talking to ourselves for an hour. So hopefully if you've seen our video from last month, you'll know that Alina and I are doing, I am going to just close that because otherwise you are just hearing me talk back on the YouTube thing. So anyway,
yeah, you can put that on mute so that you can still watch the chat.
I will reopen it in a second and do that, but just while I introduce. Anyway, so as you know, Alina and I are doing these monthly streams on genre. Last time we did a bit of an introduction, so today we're back to kick things off properly and we're talking urban fantasy and paranormal romance. So just a brief introduction to ourselves first. My name's Nicki. I'm a freelance editor and author, and I write fiction pretty much across lots of genres and both MF and LGBT. So over to you, Alina, if you want to give us a quick intro.
Thank you. Morning, everyone, because it's morning here. Apparently, I don't know, I'm not fully awake. My name is Alina. I'm a fiction writer from Romania. As Nicki, I write across borders and I hop between genres all the time. I do write quite a bit of urban fantasy and paranormal, then some sci-fi and sometimes some contemporary. And I also have most of my books under the LGBT fiction and romance umbrella. Not all of them, but most.
Okay, so we're kicking off, as I said, paranormal romance and urban fantasy. So I thought to start with, it might be interesting just for Alina and I to talk about what things we like in this genre, particularly in terms of tropes that we enjoy or ones that we particularly dislike. So do you want to go first, Alina?
I would, but before we start, I'd like to say that the line between urban fantasy and paranormal romance is sometimes a bit muffled. In theory, it's paranormal romance when the romance is the main focus of the story. So pretty much kind of the same genre with a bit of romance added to it. That said, urban fantasy can have romantic subplots. They're just not the exact focus. And if anyone has any questions about that, please ask them in the chat or in the comments. It took me a while to get to understand this distinction because if you ask me, it's not the clearest ever. But yeah, let's start with tropes. I do love my vampires in my urban fantasy because that's the first encounter I had with the paranormal genre. And it was soon after the revolution when Interview with the Vampire, the movie, came to Romania. And soon after that, the books were translated and published. So that's how it works here. A movie gets famous, they bring in the movie, and then they start translating and publishing the books. It's why we don't have all of them. And it's why books like Vampire Diaries got to Romania really late, like about season 2 of the TV series. So I've always been partial to vampires, although they have nothing to do with Romania. I should say that with Romanian folklore, they're not really part of it. We have other supernatural beings, but not vampires. So I got obsessed with them. I had papers in university. I was studying journalism, by the way. I had papers on vampires and how the myths were integrated in society and people who actually thought they were real life vampires. So yeah, but then I discovered werewolves as well, and I love those. I don't know. I can't pick between them, but I think they're like at the same level. And then later I discovered the fae and the dragons and everything else, witches, and I kind of love them all. But vampires and werewolves will always be at the top of the chain. Sorry, that's just how it is. And in terms of tropes I dislike, I'm not really a fan of MPreg, which is male pregnancy. I've seen some that were done sort of okay, but it's not my thing. I will read it, and if the story is good, I'll enjoy the story, but that's not something I enjoy a lot. And that's my dog, I'm sorry. And I also kind of dislike the insta-love aspect of many paranormal romances.
Yes.
No. I mean, I understand the concept of fated mates, but there should be more than some invisible bond and arousal that brings two people together. I don't know. Just because they're destined to be together, you should see them grow and fall in love and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it.
Yep. So I think you and I are probably pretty similar in some of the things we like and dislike here. I am a fan of the genre/genres. However, as you say, there is a bit of a fine line between them sometimes. And I've read them, I write them. I guess for me, like you, I'm a big vampire fan. I don't read werewolves as much. I will a little bit, but essentially I stick mostly to vampires, a little bit of angels as well thrown in. And I've read the odd sort of zombie one as well, but I always find the zombie ones a little bit weird. In terms of tropes and things that I like the sort of scenario of the human drawn into the paranormal world. When I write, they often tend to go that way. I kind of like, they have to be well done because it's become one of those cliche things, but the vampire fighting his nature slashed against the vampire who revels in it. Yeah, and the sort of tension between species, I think, can work quite well, the sort of werewolves versus vampires. In terms of ones I don't like, I guess similar to you, I'm not a fan of Mpreg, and there's not a particular reason for it. Lots of people like it. It's just never really appealed to me. I've never really got the appeal, the interest in it. In the werewolves I don't read a lot, and I don't mind the whole alpha omega thing, except when it just becomes this sort of the whole point of the novel, if you see what I mean, which ties into what I'm going to say next, actually, because my least favorite trope ever in paranormal romance is the idea that someone's mine. You know, that it's usually a vampire or a werewolf that they mostly do it with. And I'm thinking Christine Feehan and the Dark Carpathian series. I don't know if you know that one, Alina.
No, I don't.
They're vampires, essentially, with a twist. But in all of the books, it's pretty much the same, that the vampire has this fated mate. It's usually a human woman. And when he finds them, he just goes all out possessive. And it's taken to the point where I almost feel like the woman doesn't get a choice in the matter. And, she usually ends up being kidnapped and it's like, you're mine and you can't do anything about it kind of thing. And I don't like that. I think that takes it too far. And you think, well, when does the woman get any, or the other man, if it's an MM, when do they get any choice? It's fine coming from the vampire, but the woman kind of feels like she's being kidnapped and Stockholm syndromed into it a lot of the time.
Yeah, I
don't like that.
Yeah, no, I get the part about excessive possessiveness. I'm sorry if the light gets weird with the brighter sun now. I'll do something about it if it gets worse, by the way. I do understand extreme possessiveness because they are partly beast. But from that and being territorial, because especially for wolves, they'd be territorial. But from that to kidnapping people and giving them no choice, there's a long way to travel. Seriously, there's a long way to travel, and I don't particularly like that. I do have alphas and betas in my werewolf universe, but those are just leadership roles. There's no omega. There's no picking on weaker people. It's just a position you hold. And in most cases, it's inherited.
Yes.
There is an alpha family and they are ruling. Or in the case of the Dacian wolves, it's kind of something you can't change about yourself. There's someone chosen before their birth anyway. People can guess who it might be because it comes from certain bloodlines, but that's about it. And I changed it for the wolves that kind of would mimic the territory of the North and South America continents, because there's a council of elders. And they rule. There are no alphas or betas for that particular tribe. But yeah, I don't like it when there is an alpha and omega, and the omega has to have an alpha, and the alpha has to have an omega. And there's always in those scenarios there will be an abusive alpha.
Yes, yes.
That the omega has to get away from, or some forced marriage or something. I'll be back in a second. I have to do something, because otherwise I'll be blind by the end of this.
Yes, yes.
Sorry. It was super cloudy, so I thought it wouldn't be a problem, but then it stopped being as cloudy. As it happens on stream. So yeah, I totally agree with you there. It's just, no.
That kind of put me off reading Christine. I was reading a bit of Christine Feehan, and it kind of put me off a bit. And one that does it really well, though, actually, that I do like is Deborah Harkness' All Souls trilogy. I don't know if you've read that one.
Nope.
They're actually making it into a TV thing, so you might end up getting it in Romania soon once the TV
I know,
comes
I don't care. I stopped buying books in Romania the moment I had access to it. And that was before Kindle, because I discovered some small shops in Bucharest that carried English books exclusively. So that's what I got, and now I get them on Kindle. That's what I do, because it's the fastest. And to be honest, to get a paperback here, it's a bit of a hassle.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, I could get them from Book Depository because they do deliver like free of charge, but A, it would take a while. B, I don't enjoy physical books as much. Anymore.
Deborah Harkness, I think, does it well because she has a vampire witch relationship in her trilogy.
Oh, my.
And I like it because Matthew the vampire is somewhat possessive, but it's not how things start out. They begin with this sort of tentative relationship, and they come to grow fond of each other. And it's only once he decides that, yes, she is his, like the mate, the one who's been waiting for in his life, then he does become a little bit possessive and gets a bit jealous and a little bit aggressive if other males are near her. But he recognizes that and he acknowledges it and tries to keep on top of it. And she's fairly strong, so she'll stand up to him about it, and so will other friends of theirs. So it doesn't become too sort of overreaching of the entire relationship. So I think he handles it well. It acknowledges it's there and that he reacts like that. But it doesn't take over everything. So I think that she manages it really well.
Yeah.
So that's probably...
That sounds like a series I'd love to read. So.
It's quite good. It's got a sort of base in alchemy and things as well. So there are sort of witches, demons and vampires. And there's a fairly sort of erudite, I guess, aspect to it as well. There's a bit of a mystery of this book that everyone's after that keeps disappearing, that's to do with all the heritage of the supernatural creatures. So it is good. I enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to the TV series. So we'll see how that works out. It's showing in UK first, so I don't know when we'll get it here in Australia, but we'll have to wait for it. But that probably seems, since we're talking about particular authors, that probably is a good time to move into question 2, which is what are some of our favourite books and authors in these genres. So do you want to kick us off, Alina?
That's a good idea. I have no I mean, the moment someone asks me of favorites, I kind of shut down. Because I can't pick favorites, but I can talk about a few. I would always have a special place in my heart for Anne Rice and her vampires, because those were the first I ever encountered, and I absolutely adored Lestat, as you well know.
Yes.
I adored him so much that I watched Queen of the Damned, the movie, like 10 times. What they did to the books was absolutely horrendous. But yeah, I will always love that. But I never could get behind her decision of having blood flow everywhere except their nether regions. That is not... That's not how blood flow works. Whatever. I've heard plenty of explanations. To me, it makes no sense. If it doesn't reach certain areas properly, you just pump more blood in. It's that easy. It's that easy. And I'm sorry. If you think like in the first book, in Interview with the Vampire, if you think of how much blood Lestat ingested. That's just an impossibility. No, that's not happening. Like, I'm sorry. It's just, no.
I can see you just taking over like sexual counseling for the vampires in the Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles.
It's to me, I mean, I understand why she made that, and it was an interesting choice, but it just makes no sense. I will never understand it ever. But I did enjoy that. It's kind of yes, that and Louis have something going on. I mean, it's clear more so in the second and third book.
Yes.
And I would always love that. I did enjoy Charlene Harris's series a lot, but I liked the Harper Connolly series more than the Sookie Stackhouse Vampire of the South series, because that lost me halfway into it. I kind of got pissed with Sookie because she didn't accept her life. She complained about it and she never did anything about it.
Yes.
Like, everybody's trying to hurt me. Like, dude, you're freaking special. They want something from you. You either get protection, learn how to defend yourself better, or move. You don't just sit there and take it. And that bouncing in between the two vampires, and I'm sorry, I have an issue. Like, Vampire Bill is like the most it's like the most idiotic name for a vampire. Like, I'm sorry. You have Eric and then Bill. Like,
and it's like, is there a choice, Sookie? No, not really.
No, not really. And I just got bored with it. I felt like it just got completely complicated, and everything had to get complicated. She couldn't keep a decision for more than a book, because otherwise, what would be the conflict? So I loved it at first. I thought it was really gritty and interesting, but then I kind of stopped. And I wanted to show a book, which I think is highly underrated. I think it's still free on Amazon. This is called Still Waters. I'm not sure if that's coming off.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a gay romance story, and it has a sort of a merman, but it's not a very standard take on that trope. And this I loved. I absolutely adored this book. And then, I mean, I moved into, I read Twilight. I didn't enjoy that. And in terms of vampires, werewolves, sorry, my first series was Bitten. I forget the author. Anyway, I disliked the book. I DNF'd it halfway through. Yeah. And then the series came out, and I love the TV series. That's wonderful. I love that. So, yeah. And that's where, like, the books I would mention right now end, because the rest are kind of things nobody heard of, probably. But I need to mention that I do enjoy interesting takes on demons and angels and stuff like that, and that's why I loved Souls for Sale so much. Yeah. For those who don't know, that's Nicki's book, which I read twice into different editions.
Shameless promo time. Yep.
Yep. It's not shameless promo because I'm promoting you.
That's true.
So
that's true.
I love demons. So yeah, that about wraps it up forcefully, because otherwise I'd speak about my favorites for like the next 2 hours. So.
Okay, so just briefly, a couple of mine then. Like you, I do enjoy Anne Rice. That was one of the earliest. I'd read the Vampire Diaries before that, but Anne Rice was when I kind of really got into the vampire genre. Then Charlene Harris as well. I haven't read the Harper Connelly ones, but I liked the True Blood, but I, like you, the sort of later books just didn't do it for me quite as much as some of the earlier ones. Deborah Harkness, we just mentioned, the All Souls trilogy, which I do really enjoy. I recently reread it late last year when I knew that they were filming the TV series, and been keeping up with what's going on with that and when it's coming out and things. One that I will mention, now it's a bit of a borderline case, I think, but it's the Night Watch series by a Russian called Lukyanenko. Hopefully I'm saying that roughly right. And it was made into films, the first 2 books, Night Watch and Day Watch. And I think it would count as urban fantasy. It kind of straddles that little divide between sort of fantasy and urban fantasy, I guess.
I think I know
and they're worth reading. And there's a sort of duality. So when you become a vampire or witch, whatever you are, you're either light or dark. So there's a bit of a constant battle going on between the two camps. So it's one of those that's really hard to describe without spoiling it. But I'll have to send you a link anyway. But it's called Night Watch, and I can't remember the guy's first name, but it's Lukyanenko anyway is the surname. Okay. And the films were really good as long as you watch the subtitled versions, because the dubbing is, or at least the dubbing in English, is absolutely appalling.
That light and dark thing, I think they took in that Canadian series with the succubus. I forget the name.
Yes, I know the one you mean, and I can't think what it is called either at the moment, but it'll come to us. So other than that, I better mention Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough, because Alina knows I love her, and she writes historical vampire stories, and I find hers interesting because really the fact he's a vampire is pretty irrelevant in some ways to the stories. It's more, she uses it as a device to explore these different historical periods, and him being a vampire, obviously it doesn't impact the story. Like sometimes he gets caught out and he hasn't had any blood, or he gets trapped somewhere and things like that, but essentially that's not the big focus. It's not like most paranormal romance where him and the female protagonist are the big plot point. There's usually some major historical event going on and he is moving through it.
Yeah, that was the part I liked, because I read a book when you recommended it, and that part I liked. I think the reason why I didn't get into it as much was that I really didn't like the love interest in the first book. I didn't.
Was it Hotel Transylvania you read?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that's Madeline, isn't it?
There was a satanic cult. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's Madeline then. So
I didn't even remember. I mean, I'm bad with names, but hers I didn't even want to try to remember. I had no idea why he was so attracted to her. Okay, I understand she tried to make her look a bit different, but I don't think she was the smartest or most I don't know, eye-catching beauty of the time. And
and what I like about the series is it is a different woman each time, because obviously it's a different time period. So
I mean, better to turn them, never, like.
Sorry,
you never thought to turn them ever in the series?
Oh, he does sometimes. Okay, he has a few of them, sometimes with bad consequences. But it's one of those series where if you can read them in order, and that's great, and you can either read them in chronological order of the time period the stories are setting, or in this order she wrote them, but you can also just pick one up completely at random, which I do like about it, because when I first got into it, she'd been writing them since the 70s. She's still writing them now. There's over 20. And you could just keep working till you found them online, because some of the older ones were quite hard to find. And you could just pick up wherever and read them. However, Better in the Dark's one of my favourites, actually, for the female lead. That's got a really interesting, strong female lead. So those ones. And I guess the last one I mentioned is a husband and wife team called Claire and Susan Griffith. And they've only come out really in the last few years. They're fairly new. And they wrote the Vampire Empire series, which we may end up coming back to in a future week, actually, because if we end up touching on steampunk at all, it also comes under steampunk, although I technically call it paranormal romance, essentially. And that's set in a future where vampires have basically taken over the Northern Hemisphere, and all the humans, so they're in control of England and most of Europe, for example, and all the humans are down in Egypt, based in Alexandria particularly. And and so that's, and there's the sort of continuous war going on, although it's reached a bit of a stalemate. And we have sort of, again, I've got to be really, really careful not to spoiler it, because I am terrible when I start talking and I have to really think and say, don't say that. So there's the human female lead anyway, and then there's the adventurer hero who's the male lead, and he rescues humans who are stuck in the vampire occupied territory and gets them to the south, and they eventually meet. And that's the love story that's sort of at the center of everything else that happens. And she has skills as a geomancer. She can sort of influence to do with ley lines in the earth and things. So again, it's one I mustn't ruin by talking about it too much, but that's a really interesting series. And they went on to write another trilogy called Crown and Key, which featured werewolves and alchemists, and again, a bit of a steampunk, kind of with magicians, or more mage type magicians. So that's also a really fun series, and I like their books. Part of me cringes sometimes because the editor in me wants to fix things in their prose a little bit, but I love the stories so much that I love the story so much that I can overlook it, and I find them really great fun.
I just realized I completely forgot an important author.
Yes.
And that is Ioana Vișan. She was a Romanian author. She was the first author I met on social media, I think. One of the first. And she died almost 2 years ago.
Right.
Which was a bit of a shock, to be honest. She was in the middle of a series, and I will always regret she never got to finish that. But I want to mention her Impaler series. It's a very interesting take on vampires. It's pretty much a world where vampires are part of our society, and the only country where they're banned is Romania.
Okay.
No vampires are allowed to go through. And they took Vlad Țepeș and turned him into this sort of hero that fought vampires.
Okay.
And his troops became elite fighters. Yep. And the main characters are Romanian sort of council member. There's a minor council handling affairs that pertain to the country and vampires as well. And her guest, who is a vampire. And I remember this scene where she's showing him Bucharest, and she takes him to a museum dedicated to instruments used to kill and torture vampires. Max is a really interesting character, the vampire, and the story itself is really entertaining. And what I loved most was that for once, the human girl does not fall in love with a vampire. They just become really great friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And she has a love interest. It's a human doctor, but I really love that bit. I loved it to pieces. And that series is completed. There are 3 books and a couple of novellas, I think. And she also wrote the Fae series, which unfortunately, I think we only have the first book. So.
And was it translated, or is it only in Romanian?
It's in English.
Okay.
It's in English. Yeah, she published everything in English. Right. She had some works in Romanian too, mostly sci-fi. And she does write steampunk as well. But I thought I'd just mention the paranormal.
That sounds
stuff.
Interesting, yeah. I'll definitely look on that.
She was young. She was like 3 years older than me when she died, and it was kind of sudden and everything. But yeah, her books are amazing, and people should check them out.
Great.
If they can. Yep.
So we'll move on, and we'll stick with favourite things for a minute before we start talking about our own works. And we should touch briefly on TV and film, I guess, because it's a huge category in both. So is there any particular ones you want to give a shout out to that you want to talk about that you like?
Yeah, Aris wants to share his favorites.
Hello, Aris.
Which are carrots, probably, and meat. But anyway, I love Supernatural. I will always love Supernatural. That is such an interesting take on everything. And I think that's a series that does foreshadowing really well.
Yes, that's true.
It's amazing how they do foreshadowing. And then when it hits you, you remember stuff from 2 seasons ago. And then you're like, how did I not see this? How the hell did I not see this? Which is pretty awesome. I do enjoy... I enjoyed a lot the Penny Dreadful series. Although that's not... I mean... That's kind of paranormal, but
it's sort of gothic-y paranormal, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know where it falls, but
I'm not sure it knew either.
It doesn't matter. It was just great.
No.
And I did like Grimm a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
But it lost me midway. True Blood, again, there were seasons that I loved, and others that when I go like, what the hell is wrong with you people? No, that's just not how it works. Vampire Diaries, I loved way more than the books. And We've talked about this extensively.
We have discussed that at length, yes.
And for a different take on a sort of a paranormal world, I loved Sense8.
Yes.
The Netflix series. I think that's really good. Although that's not exactly paranormal, it's, you know, somewhere in between. I like superhero stuff, which kind of falls into the paranormal urban fantasy.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's kind of its own genre. But yeah, and vampire movies, I think I love them all. Like, there are very few I did not enjoy, like Vampire 3000. No, Dracula 3000, which I don't recommend to anyone.
Oh, the Gerard Butler. Yes.
No. Dracula 3000.
Oh, 3000, okay.
No, it's this ridiculous thing that happens in space and there are boobs everywhere.
Okay, I haven't even come across that one, so I shall have to look it up now.
Yeah, no, I was like really desperate to get all the vampire movies. And that was, oh my God, that was bad. That was bad. Jesus. But yeah, I don't think I've watched a lot of recent vampire movies that I didn't enjoy, at least partly. I even enjoyed the Twilight series, although I think it's bad. Like, I think the movies are kind of bad, but I enjoyed it for the simple fact that there were vampires, I could even get on board with the glitter because, you know, glitter. If you think of it as makeup or stuff to put on your nails, you can deal with that. So yeah, that would be like, I don't think there was a show that was paranormal or urban fantasy nature that I did not enjoy.
Yeah.
At least for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same with you. True Blood. True Blood kind of lost me around series 5, 6, although I did come back and finish it. Vampire Diaries also. I only just recently finished season 8 of Vampire Diaries, like literally last week, because they finally put it up on Netflix. So I got to see the end. And again, that lost me about around season 6. And I kept watching it, but I'd kind of lost my enthusiasm. But series 8, as they finished it all off, I did enjoy again. Grimm, I've watched all the way through. Again, he had some seasons, there was a bit of a dip, and then it improved again. Heroes I loved. I wasn't as keen on the reboot that they did more recently, but the original cast.
I never got into the original. I don't know why I tried, but no, didn't speak to me.
Buffy and Angel, obviously.
God, yeah, how could I forget that?
Being Human, the UK one.
Yes,
sorry, Americans, but ours was the original, and it's better. I'm sorry.
No, the US one was just crap, while the UK one was absolutely brilliant.
I think the trouble is sometimes the humor doesn't always translate. Like, I mean, I'm not going to dwell on it, it's completely off topic for paranormal and urban fantasy, but Red Dwarf was another one that it just didn't work. It was a complete flop in America straight away. It didn't work because they just didn't get the humor. It was very British humor. And I think in some ways that's true of Being Human. They tried to just literally take it and put it in America, and it didn't work. It might have worked better if they'd adapted the style of it, perhaps, to a more American style of humor. But
yeah, I don't understand that. I really don't understand that because I mean, I love both sides of humor. I like American humor, although it's more in your face, and I love British humor. But that's probably because I grew up learning British English in school.
Yes,
so
yeah.
I was exposed to it more. And the first comedic shows that were aired in Romania, I think it was Benny Hill.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And some other things like that. So, yeah, I don't understand. I think if you take the time to enjoy it, you'll get to it. But I think people just have a very limited attention span. And I think they're more open to something that's different if they get the original. I think if they would just have aired the UK version of Being Human, maybe they would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah, they didn't need to remake it, just put it on. Yeah. And some other ones, some series that didn't last very long, but I thought were great. Moonlight. I don't know if you saw that one with the sort of where he's a PI, detective, vampire PI, and then turning that on its head, Blood Ties, where the human was the PI.
I've seen that too. I'm so sorry they didn't make more of that.
Yeah, and I mean that one was obviously based on books by Tanya Huff.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that because no information.
Yep. Tanya Huff was the author. I think they were called the Blood Books, something like that. But those were originally books. And more recently, Dusk to Dawn. Now, the film of Dusk to Dawn, I didn't mind, but I wasn't that fussed about it. But I really enjoyed the TV version. I liked that sort of slightly different take on vampires. I thought the casting was spot on. The guys they had playing the brothers. Really enjoyed that one. Going back to early Michael Fassbender, which is the only reason I watched this show, actually, is Hex, in which he played the demon as Aziel.
Hex?
Yeah. It's on, look it up on YouTube, because it's on. I think it's all on YouTube. There were 2 seasons, and it was sort of witches and demons, essentially. And it's not the best series ever, but it's enjoyable enough, and it's got Michael Fassbender looking gorgeous in it. So, it doesn't need anything else. So there's that one. Salem.
I've seen parts of it.
Yeah, it's pretty old now. I mean, we're probably going back 10 to 15 years. Probably close to 15. I didn't even know
who was in it.
So, yeah, there you go. Michael Fassbender early appearance. Originals, obviously, which Netflix has just put up series 4 2 days ago. So I'm very excited for some more Elijah soon.
Maybe I'll watch it because you love it so much.
And Lucifer is probably the other one I mentioned at the moment for TV, which I've seen the first 2 seasons so far. Again, I've got to wait for Netflix to put it up for 3, but
it has season 3.
Oh, not on Netflix yet. Not for Australia, anyway.
Yes. I've seen parts of season 3. The ones that
I don't think we've got it yet. I think it'll go up later this year.
I've seen it on Netflix. I mean,
yeah, it might be a territorial thing. They make us wait for everything in Australia.
Yeah, no, I made the mistake of having a trial. They're supposed to warn me 3 days before the free trial ends, and I'm supposed to cancel it then. And I'm pretty sure I won't. But anyway, that was a big mistake. You don't do that when you're super busy, but it doesn't matter. And that's why I knew that they had the episodes that had already aired, because the rest will pick up in like a week.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
So I mean, in terms of films, like you, I watch most vampire films, and I like quite an odd mixture. I mean, I enjoy stuff like the original Nosferatu, The Shadow of the Vampire. That was the sort of spoof on Nosferatu in a way.
If they're scary, I don't watch them.
I loved Only Lovers Left Alive with Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton. I thought that was awesome. I like the Underworld series, like completely different vibe from Only Lovers Left Alive. But I mean, there's some really great stuff out there, and some of them are pretty average. And then you get a few sort of sleepers. Byzantium's one that no one has really heard of much, but I thought that was really good. It's a little bit of a slow burn, but it did get really good later on. Gemma Arterton was in that one.
I'm trying to. I don't think I've seen this one.
It's reasonably recent. I think about 2013 or so. Yeah. Worth watching. It's not a big actiony one, but it's more of a slow burn sort of one, but really good. And I like my vampire musicals as well, of course.
Oh, this one's Irish. Maybe that's why I have no idea of it, because
it's a pretty indie one. It wasn't a big mainstream release.
I have to search for that.
So, and then have you seen the Jude Law one? What was that called? Immortal or something? Immortality.
I don't know. He was just trying to seduce women into them, kill them. Right, that one.
Yeah, that's the one.
I thought that was a brilliant movie. I loved it.
It's just Jude Law as a vampire. I mean, I don't think they could really go wrong, could they? They didn't really need a script at all. Like,
actually, they needed to. I mean, that story could have gone wrong in so many ways.
Oh yes,
it didn't, which was great. Can you go away?
Oh, poor Aris.
I didn't have time for breakfast, and I'm supposed to eat it as close to my wake up time as I can. And I have this thing which is like not that great for dogs because it has a lot of protein and other stuff. No sugar, no anything. But because it's something, because it's something I ingest.
Yeah, he wants it. Yeah. So I guess before we ramble on about TV and film for half an hour, which we are likely to do if we let ourselves.
We can.
let's move on and have a talk about some of our own works in the genre. So do you want to tell us what books you've got out, what draws you to writing in paranormal and fantasy, and what you enjoy about it, and perhaps what you find more difficult or don't enjoy as much about writing it?
Well, I won't start with my debut series. I will start with my werewolf series, just because that dog there inspired it. When I got him, and he was kind of younger, like before he turned 1, and he got some training, and this was my first super large dog that I owned on my own, and I was responsible for everything.
Yeah.
And he pissed me off sometimes because he wouldn't listen to anything I said. And I was just thinking that maybe if I turned into a werewolf, then he'll be too afraid to do anything wrong and he'd obey me. So that kind of sparked an entire world of werewolves. And I came up with this initial story of an MMF, sort of a pairing. And I was sure that was going to be the first book, but then I plucked Shiki out of the world and roleplayed him. And he became such a great part of my day-to-day life that when I started writing this series, I just had to first put out Shiki's story. And then one character from that book got the center stage and whatever. I haven't wrote the first book. I haven't written the first book. I can't words yet, although I have like 20,000 words of it already drafted, but I'll get to it at some point. But my first series ever and my debut novel were a vampire series, which I haven't finished yet, as it happens, and which I'm currently relaunching because although I did my research at the point where I self-published, I didn't know as much about self-publishing as I know now, and I made some very big mistakes, like waiting for 1.5 years between books and then never releasing book 3. So I'm, in a way, that was a blessing because I'm re-editing book 1 now, and I'm going to relaunch them with new covers and everything. And I kind of write things that interest me in terms of reading. If I'd want to read a story, then I'll write it.
Yeah.
I'm not the type of writer that would write just things that pop up in my head because it would be cool to write. If it's not cool to read, I don't care. And I use myself as the first compass. Is this something I'd enjoy? Yes. Well, we're going in that direction.
Yes. Yeah.
I love to play, when it comes to paranormal, I love to play on that fine line between a true paranormal story and making the reader wonder if the character is going insane.
Yes, yeah.
And I did that in 2 stories so far, and I'll probably do it again. Because I did that in Craving Stains.
Yes.
It's sci-fi mostly, but it has a paranormal component. And I did that in Chimera, which was a short story I published in the Three Is Not a Crowd anthology.
Yes.
But I will play with that again. I love that. And I get inspired by a certain type of character, and then I build the story around them. I feel that most of my paranormal and urban fantasy stuff is character driven. And right now I have this witch character that won't let me be.
Yep.
And there will be half breeds, like half demon and half angel, and this witch who's an outcast, and it will be fun. She's a bit of an antisocial person to start with, and she's, as I described her, an equally hating person. She hates everyone, despite it doesn't matter what race they are, and by race I mean human, vampire, witch.
Yes, yeah.
I mean actual races, species. Let's say species.
Yeah.
So that's how I go about it, and I try to come with a twist on the genre. Sometimes I get loads of crap for it, like it happened with the werewolf thing, because oh my god, he lost his mates, and that's not a forever bond. No, sometimes people die and leave you, or they leave you because reasons, and you have to survive that. So that's how I do it. I go into the lore and try to keep things that I love about it, but then put my own twist on the trope. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess with mine, I mean, I've written paranormal, and probably I'd say my stuff's more paranormal than urban fantasy. And I've written it for both LGBT and MM. So with the MM, obviously, Alina mentioned earlier, My Soul's for Sale, which just re-released from Nine Star Press, and that's an angels and demons kind of tale, with a human caught in between them in the middle in a way. And that one actually started because of a call for an anthology. It began life as a short story, and it was just angels and demon stories. And I thought, well, what if there's a sort of selling of a soul going on, and then the demon comes to regret it because he falls in love with the guy, which was the basic premise that kickstarted that story.
I am really thankful for that anthology call, because your story came out of it, and I got a sci-fi series out of it.
Yeah.
Although it never made it into the anthology because it was too long. So.
Yeah. So it was a good call. It was a bit of an inspiring one. There were some good stories in that anthology, I think.
Yeah.
We all had some good inspiration from that one. So I'm actually working, sticking with MM first. I'm working on two really. One of them's very early stages. I've got another paranormal tale coming that I'm pretty much finishing the third draft of this week, hopefully.
Oh, nice.
And it's nearly done. It needs one more solid round of edits just to tweak some of the description. I've just noticed as I do this round of edits that there's some places where there's stuff about the world building I know in my head, and it probably is information that people need. So I just need to work out where I can slot it in naturally into the story without info dumping it. So that'll be my fourth round of edits, and that should nearly tie it all up then, I think. So I'm hoping to have it ready to submit to the publisher by about July. And that's got witches, vampires, demons in a way, and fae, all the species set in modern day London. And there's a bit of a murder mystery story going on in the background, which brings all the characters together. So I'm actually reading it to my husband at the moment. I used to read a lot of my stories to my husband, but then in the first few years when I started writing seriously, but more recently, I've had lots of stories on the go, and he's gotten busy at work. But this one, I've got one particular character in it who I love him, but I need to make sure that he's going to come across okay to the readers. So I said to Corey, will you listen to this one? So we'll probably do a couple more chapters tonight. We're about halfway through, just to get his opinion. And he doesn't really go deep into feedback. He's not literary. He enjoys books, but he's not literary minded. But he'll just give me a rough idea. Did he enjoy the characters? Did he like the plot? Did he guess plot was too early? That sort of thing, just so I can tidy everything up. So at the same time, I'm also starting research on a new piece. This one's going to be quite an interesting one, I think. I'm enjoying doing the research on it because it's going to be set during the Gordon riots, which for anyone who doesn't know English history, 1780, the Gordon riots were a protest against a relaxation of the laws against the Catholics. It's some of the worst riots that England had. It went on for days. Prisons were basically completely torn down and houses were ransacked and the like. So that's going to be the background of is going on during the story. So I'm researching that. I'm also researching resurrectionists and anatomy in the period, which I won't tell you anymore at the moment. It's a secret till I get into it. But that one will be next.
Really great.
So I enjoy that. I've done a few historical paranormals, and I enjoy it. In some ways, it's occasionally easier to set paranormals in the modern day, and you're only concentrating on the sort of supernatural aspects relating to your characters. But I do enjoy also trying to take them back and working that within a historical setting, which I did in Bramhall, which was one of my Nicki J, Markus, my MF titles. And that was vampires in a Regency setting, 1820s. So that was great fun. And I mean, most of the stuff I've done does tend to be contemporary, but I do like to mix it up and do a bit of historical as well. And I think a part of me really wants to be Chelsea Quinn Yarbrough, although her historical research is so great and her historicals come across so well. I think hers concentrate on the history and plot a bit more, I think, whereas I tend to focus, like Alina, more on character. and the sort of setting is a little bit more, it's not irrelevant, but it has less importance in the story.
Yeah. No, the only historical I did, sort of historical, is not really historical, is the Warriors of this series, where it's an alternate universe, but there's no magic or anything. It's just a different world with humans who are kind of medieval warriors.
Yeah.
That's so.
I think this Gordon Riots one will probably end up being a bit, not full alternate history, but sort of putting another slant on maybe there was another reason for the riots other than the one that history records. That should be quite fun. But I guess like you, I enjoy the standard tropes about vampires and werewolves. And so you kind of take that sort of usual standard information and just try and put your own turn on things. Is pretty similar to you, how I approach writing them. So I guess that's probably a good point to move into our next question or sort of area for discussion, which are current trends in the genres, including things like the design aspect and covers and things like that. So do you want to give us some thoughts, Alina?
Yeah, well, my first thought is that, publishers, the smaller indie publishers I've seen don't do this a lot, and to me is insane. I don't understand it, but I've noticed that for a lot of indie books, the covers don't communicate genre. If you have some coffee cups on the cover and it's actually an angels and demons story, people won't know. So, but for self-published authors, I've seen that they're getting better at researching their genre, because the point is you have to be original and creative with your cover. It's great to have your own take on it, but it should match the genre. And there are certain fonts or certain colors or certain things you can focus on the cover to express genre. Because otherwise, people who don't know you won't know what the book is about.
Yes.
And that's important. I know a lot of authors don't like to think about trends and fitting the market they're writing into, and not even writing to market, just fitting the expectations of the genre. But it's really important because this is a business at the end of the day. I'm all for the artistic and creative part of writing, but I would like to make money at it so that I can keep writing. Because the reality of it is that if you write for years and years and make no money out of it, you'll probably quit and get a different job. And I don't want that. And I think the world needs more stories, and more people should stay away from that aspect of quitting because they're not making money. And I think covers are really important. So are descriptions, like the little blurbs you put, because a person who doesn't know anything about you will see the cover, title, and maybe read the blurb.
Yeah.
So it's important that the cover and the title sort of communicate at least partially your genre, enough to pique their interest.
Yes.
Because in most cases, you'll show up where you shouldn't or by mistake, and they won't know exactly what the book is about. I've seen more and more covers doing it the smart way. And I've also seen covers that absolutely baffle me. I know of this one publisher where I can see like a glimpse of the cover and know it's their cover.
Yeah.
And there is no difference between their contemporary, their paranormals, their whatever. There's just no. And to me, that's a missed opportunity. It just is. So if you can, research your niche. Just go into the top 20 or 40 of the genre or category that fits your book and just look at the covers, see the trends, see what people are putting on those covers. You don't have to copy them, but you could get some inspiration on fonts or types of colors to use, and then go with your own take on it. That's perfectly fine. And in terms of trends, dragons are big, like they're big, and mermaids and mermen are gaining ground. And there's a lot of reverse harem, which I'm not that into. I'm into reverse harem of anime and manga.
Yes.
Pretty much a long courtship between a lot of people and their intended love interest, which can be male or female, and they can be male or female, whatever. But I'm not. I mean, I'm not that into one person having a relationship at the same time with 5 or 6 others. It's not my cup of tea. I understand the appeal, and it's doing really well. So if that's something that appeals to you, by all means, write it. It's doing great. And I would like to say something about trends. It's easy to chase trends when you're with a small publishing house, an independent publishing house, and when you self-publish. Meaning that if you can have a book out in less than a year, you can write in a trend.
Yes, yeah.
If you're writing for the traditional publishing industry, it would be better to try to predict trends.
Yeah, because by the time your book comes out, it's over already. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just that. Right now, when publishers acquire something, they will acquire agents and publishers. They will acquire something that they know will be on trend later on.
Yeah.
So pitching dragons now might be a bit late if your book comes out in 2 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Then again, if you're going straight to a publisher and not through an agent and then going into submissions and things like that, if you have a publisher and you can submit now, you can, obviously. But yeah, the easiest way to chase trends is being self-published. And by chase trends, I mean, if you want to write something, you find it interesting, and you could write it now or later. If now it's a good time to write it, maybe prioritize that work. I'm not saying write something you dislike just because it's trendy. That's not what I mean at all. Also, another thing, werewolves and vampires, no matter what publishers tell you, they will always sell.
Absolutely.
They still sell.
Yeah.
They still sell. That's the truth of it. It might not be the biggest sales ever, but they have constant sales and people who love the genres and always look for more.
Yes.
Of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely it's an interesting genre. I think the sort of paranormal urban fantasy, because as you say, some of it's constant. Like you always know that you're going to be okay with vampires. There's always vampire books coming out. There's always werewolf books coming out. It tends to be the others within the genre that move about. Like there was the big thing about angels for a while. Then it was zombies. Now, as you say, we're coming into dragons and mermen and that sort of thing a bit more. Those sort of move and flow a little bit more, but you know, the big standards, I think that vampires and the werewolves, they're just pretty much constant.
Yeah, they are also doing well.
Yes, true. Yeah,
and I think witches are kind of coming in strong.
Yes, there seems to be a bit of a resurgence there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, thieves and assassins, those do well in urban and paranormal settings.
Particularly YA, I noticed. There seems to be a lot of that sort of stuff in YA, paranormal, sort of lighter fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot. But I see it seeping in through the adult urban fantasy and paranormal as well.
Right.
Especially for the witches, less so. I mean, even for the assassins, but less. But the witches are, getting there. Which is pretty awesome, I think. I've heard that gargoyle paranormal romance is also on trend now.
Yeah, I haven't read any, but I have been hearing that there are a few coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. I always loved.
As soon as I think that, all I think about is, you know, that film I, Frankenstein? Did you see that?
I'm not sure if I think I did.
Because that's got gargoyles that come to life and are then sort of kick-ass soldiers.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. It. Yeah. Yeah. But apparently it's a good niche to write in.
Yeah.
That, and because I mean, if you write any sort of arcane mysteries, you can still chase that with a paranormal twist, because Dan Brown had a fairly recent release.
Yeah.
And that pushes sales for everyone in the genre. So yeah, that's a good thing to remember. If there's a series that's super famous and has a certain type of trope or certain type of character, and there's a release for that, everything else around it will sell better. And I think that's why Faye are doing great. I think there was a new Dark Fever or whatever the series called.
Oh,
release.
yes. Yep.
Yeah. And mermaids are doing really well because of the movie.
Yeah.
And I have a complete blank in my head when it comes to the title of the movie, which is sad because I love Shape of Water, that one. That pushed mermaid sales to new heights. But they were coming in strong before the movie.
Yeah. Well, I find that really, really funny since he's not really a merman. You know, he's a river god. So it's kind of like, yeah. Close enough, everyone says.
If you think about it and the symbols, you have a mute mermaid there in the girl. And if you think of Ariel,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and how she gave up her voice, like if you think a bit of the original story and her pain and loneliness and abandonment, that kind of, I mean, it has clear symbols that would lead into mermaids and mermen.
Sure.
Because that helps sell a movie better, I think. If you tap into things that people are familiar with, then put a twist on it.
Yeah, and obviously, I guess, I mean, well, Guillermo del Toro does fairy tale takes very well anyway, and there is a big market for fairy tale retellings that's been going on for a few years now, which we'll probably touch more on next week when we talk more sort of general high fantasy. But I mean, I guess I know we've both brought a few books with us to have a look at some of the sort of cover designs that have been going on. So do you want to share some of yours with us, Alina?
I wanted to compare like Romanian covers with what Nicki has, because I think that's fun. So I have the cover for Twilight, which, because it came after the movie, doesn't have the original cover.
Yeah.
It has the characters from the movie.
And now we can all say Twilight in Romanian, so isn't that impressive?
Yeah. It's one of the words for it. It's amurg. Although I think amurg has a bit of a deeper paranormal touch than Twilight.
Okay.
If I think of it. This is an Anne Rice book.
Yes.
They didn't. I'm trying to remember what the name of the book is in English. It's when Lestat hops in someone else's body.
Tale of the Body Thief.
Tale of the Body Thief. Because I was going to say story, because it's not really tale in Romania. In Romanian, it's story. And these are some of the Charlene Harris books.
Oh yeah, so your covers are pretty similar style to the English.
For the first one, they already switched it to the movie version.
Yeah.
Just to remind people this was the series they were having. But yeah, these are pretty similar, and they do. I mean, not these, but this one has a bit of a glitter on it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I also have here. These are in English. This one is in English, I think. Yeah, I got marked here. This I got from an English store. But this one and this one is the Vampire Academy, which they brought like this. They haven't.
Yeah.
They hadn't translated it by the time the movie came out, I think.
Right.
I'm not sure they translated it afterwards. I've never checked. But just to give you an idea of the price, this is a paperback basically, and the price for this was about $10-12, which is this was years after the book had been published, so they come kind of expensive if they're in English in Romania. And this one was actually $15 for a paperback, which you can get way cheaper anywhere. But
except Australia, so you're doing better than us.
Yeah,
we'd be paying about 20 for one of those, probably new in a bookstore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. It would be more expensive, but would that be when it's released or later on?
We don't get a lot of really good discounts. Even if we go to like the stores in town where it's meant to be 60% off, you'd still pay 10 to 15 then.
Yeah.
So when they come out, they'd be 20 to 30.
Yeah. This was like on discount and it was 15. So
yeah.
Great. But to be fair, these I got from mainstream bookshops,
Yes.
which had mostly Romanian books and some English books.
Yeah.
For the other ones that I got, let me just check if they have prices on them. Oh, and I didn't show you this. This is sort of paranormal. It's called Witchstorm, and this is Witchfire, the first in the series. Yeah, these were like $10.
Right.
And they're like larger books, but these were from a specialty store that only brought English books.
Right.
And yeah, it's kind of 9. It's about half. No, it's about 60% of the pound price written on them. So yeah, if you know where to get them, you can get them cheaper here as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how they look. So now you show me yours.
Yes. So I got a few different ones. I mean, I have noticed that paranormal urban fantasy, the preference does tend to be for figures on the covers. In general, if you're going real all-out paranormal romance, you might get a bare male torso or two. And if it's urban fantasy, particularly with a female heroine, she's usually sort of looking a bit grungy, like wielding a weapon of some description or sitting on a motorbike or doing something along those lines. But to start us off, I've actually got a fairly recent release, but it's actually a Regency paranormal. So the Dark Days Club. So as you can see, we have got the traditional figures of our hero and heroine on the front there with a bit of a historical twist with the lettering and things. Essentially, though, it's pretty standard in terms of the typesetting. The chapters have a slightly sort of flowery italic for the historical side of things, I guess. So a slightly different vibe. I mentioned the Vampire Empire series earlier by Clay and Susan Griffith, the husband and wife team. So this is the first book in that series. It's an illustration, hand-drawn. I love this artist. He's done the illustrations for all 4 of the covers for this series. They're quite beautiful.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah, so standard sort of setup, but with a sort of slightly atmospheric, I think, kind of image there. And it is a bit steampunky, so you can see the sort of airships in the corner. He's got his goggles on. You probably can't see that very well on the picture, but it's a really cool series, as I said. I like that one. And sticking with the sort of steampunky, I guess, paranormal, the Clockwork Princess, The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. Now, interestingly, I read the first book in the Mortal Instruments series, and I've watched a bit of the TV series, but I'd never really got into that. But I really enjoy the Infernal Devices trilogy. And I think it was because it was a bit more historical setting, a bit steampunky. I liked that way more. It had a bit something a bit different, I guess. The Mortal Instruments to me is just another similar sort of story as a lot of others, whereas this one had a bit of an interesting twist.
I didn't particularly get into that either. I don't know why. Just never happened.
And finally, as a point of interest, I brought 3 of the books by Chelsea Quinn Yarborough that I've been mentioning, the historical vampire series, just to look at how cover design has changed a bit over the last few years. Because as I said, she's been writing this since 1970. And in many of the cases, I had to find older editions to be able to find copies. And so these are ones from the 80s, early 80s and the early 90s. And look at them. They're absolutely hideous, aren't they? They're pretty awful. No one would actually want to pick one of these up. But all of them from this period are like this. They've got really sort of, they make him look really ugly. I mean, look, he's meant to be really attractive and alluring, and all the women in every story fall in love with him.
I would not give him a second look. No.
So then we move on to one more recent one. Now, this was probably the early 2000s. Let me just check. 2012. So it was one of the fairly recent ones. Commedia della Morte. So
yeah, way different.
And they're all very similar in style to this now. Often you don't see the full face, but you see a torso, usually of the women, not of him, with something to do with the historical aspect of the story in the background. And that is much more what we're used to seeing now. It has a much more enticing look about it, sort of blending between the historical fiction style covers and with a bit of the paranormal aspect. So that's quite a change in sort of the 30 odd years between when some of the others were published, which is quite interesting. So it does show you how trends have changed for what people are expecting on their covers.
True. I don't have the new ones, by the way, for mine, but for my paranormal, I went with the full face on.
I think Aris thought you were calling him when you gave the desk a bit of a bang then.
Yeah, no, I went with this, and I have the wolf kind of stylized in the back. And this is the old one. I changed the...
Yes.
This is the vampire one. So yeah, I went with the face and everything. But for the third one, I have the actual protagonist on the cover, kind of her entire body, and she's holding a sword. So totally get the action hero vibe out of that, because that's the most action-packed book anyway. But that is a trend. You have the witch or the whatever she is, center cover with some color around her, and she looks kind of upset and ready to fight, as you said.
That's it. Yeah, people like sort of Janine Frost and Karen Chance, and all their books are that sort of thing. Yeah, Sherilyn Kenyon as well, probably a lot of hers similar.
Yeah, and a lot of the indie books in the same genre follow that. Yeah. Which is, I mean, to be expected, because that's what people demand. Like, if you'd seen this now, you wouldn't think vampires. Like, you just wouldn't. Because I mean, it says vampire on the cover, but that's about it. It's just a pretty girl.
That could be any sort of teen romance kind of.
Yeah. Here, at least they did it better, because she has the red eye.
Yeah, so you go paranormal straight away. Yeah.
And you have the moon and whatever. So, but yeah, from that one, this right now, it wouldn't say paranormal with a different title, and nobody would pick it up. So, and they have I don't think you can see it very well, but they have the cover for the next book in the series here, and it's just the two people, which again doesn't look paranormal at all. People would get contemporary romance out of that with a different title. Yeah. So yeah, they have changed cover design quite a bit in the past, I think 5 to 10 years. Yeah. And I think that's because of Amazon and the self-publishing world, because people learn that they need to communicate what the book is about really fast to grab readers. Yes. And people adapted to it. Less so in the traditional publishing world, where I think they can get away with more artistic covers. Yeah. But not always. Not always. I think sometimes there are just missed opportunities, and everyone will lose in the end, the authors and the publishers. Yeah. So
okay. Well, I think that probably almost wraps us up. Is there anything else particular you wanted to talk about in terms of the paranormal urban fantasy, Alina?
I think we covered all, which is kind of impressive, because
we kept pretty on topic today, didn't we? It was quite good.
Yeah, we had a moment there where we rambled about movies a lot, but we kind of stuck to what we were intending to discuss.
We're getting good. So, it's practice.
Again, I'd like to say, if we didn't cover anything or you have any questions for us, well, we're happy to reply at any point. Yeah. We know the stream is like kind of at a weird hour, because it's kind of really tough to coordinate people on different continents and then coordinate them with other continents where their audience is. But you can always rewatch this and ask anything, I guess.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on the comments and come back in the next day or two if people have got anything they want to ask. And I mean, obviously, we're coming back. We'll be talking more fantasy again next month.
Yes, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, so I guess we'll sort of cover more high fantasy, steampunk, and any other little smaller niche ones, like the superheroes and things a bit more then.
And I can like fangirl over Brandon Sanderson.
Why not? So I guess as well, if there's something particular that to do with fantasy that we doesn't really come under urban fantasy paranormal that you want us to mention or touch on next time, do mention that in the comments too, because then we'll remember to include it for you.
Yep.
Would be the other thing to say. Definitely. But other than that, I guess we'll say goodbye from Australia, where it's pushing towards dinner time for me. And it's what, mid-morning-ish for you now, Alina?
Yeah. It's 11:15, so
yeah,
getting there.
So that's what we mean, as you can see, about the time zones. So
as Mera Wood said, time zones are weird, which they are a bit, tiny bit. But we're doing our best, and this was a really fun conversation. I'm really glad we did this monthly stream because it's turning out better than I expected it. I'm loving it so far. And yeah, by the way, Nicki just released her Souls for Sale book, so maybe you should pick that up. I've read it, I've enjoyed it. I was supposed to publish a wrap-up where I talked about how much I enjoyed it, but I'm behind with that. But there is a review on my blog. If you want to see that, just head to eyesonbooks.com and you'll see Souls for Sale, because I think it's the latest review I published, or the one just after that. So yeah, you should definitely check out Nicki's book.
Thank you for the plug. So we'll end anyway. We look forward to seeing you again next time. So we'll have a date for you soon once I know Alina does lots of different streams with everyone, so we have to tie up some dates, but as soon as we know one, we'll let you all know. And
yeah, I think for next month it will be just our choice, because as far as I know, Claire is traveling. Okay. So we won't have a Descent into Madness stream in May, but I will find out everything at the end of this month, and we'll be announcing a date for everyone. And next month the stream will be on my channel. Yeah.
Okie doke. So goodbye from me.
Bye.
See you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.